So for our next panel, moving swiftly on, we're going to look at brand safety and suitability for connected TV. So the other side of the coin, really, in terms of you've got your measurement on your one hand, then you need to make sure your brand safety is taken care of as well. So earlier this year, the IAB Europe released a guide to help all stakeholders working in the connected TV ecosystem maintain best practices and ensure brand safe environments for advertisers. We'll drop a link to the report in the chat box so you can download it, but it's a really good piece of work and just covers everything you need to know on connected TV, including a bit of what we're going to talk about now, which is that brand safety and suitability piece. Obviously, today, the modern marketer is equipped with a variety of solutions for brand safety and content verification when dealing with tried and tested digital advertising formats. However, with connected TV being a new channel, it brings completely new challenges. As advertisers continue to shift budgets into a new medium, trust will be key to unlocking the full potential of this channel. So how do we do that? I'm delighted to welcome the next moderator for this panel, Adler-Swanberg, who's the Director of Marketplace Quality at MediaMath, who will ask the panel exactly that. And I can see Justin has made his way out of the green room, so the floor is yours.
Thank you. And of course, brand safety and brand suitability are very important topics, very hot topics. I just introduce quickly our speakers. We have John Ross, Director of Product Strategy at DoubleVerify. We have Carla Lawrence, Head of Operations at Finecast. And we have Janelle de Rivera, Director of Product Management, Moat Analytics, Oracle Advertising. Let's just get right down to it, shall we? Folks, as the adoption of CTV continues to grow rapidly, trust is key to unlocking the full potential of this channel. So how does brand safety and brand suitability work in the CTV environment? Carla, would you mind starting us off? I think you're on mute, Carla.
Rookie error, sorry. So yeah, at Finecast, we buy everything directly from our broadcaster and our premium supply partners. We don't access anything at all from the open exchange. So everything we buy is through direct tag integrations with our broadcasters into their ad servers. We thoroughly vet all of the content we run across. We have humans that go in and continually check where all of our activity is running, and we have agreements in place in terms of what content we are happy to run across. And all of our advertising or all of our ad deals they're set up in categorized into what is okay for certain advertisers versus others. So I guess if you've got restricted or there's restricted ads which are graded via Clearcast, that will all be taken into consideration as to which publisher inventory we're running the ads across. So yeah, that's how brand safety and suitability works for us right now at Finecast.
Great, thank you. Really appreciate that. John, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, what Carla mentioned, that's been the best practice that we've seen our buyers use of kind of going forward with these direct campaigns. I think a lot of buyers and sellers, they don't realize that there is brands like unsafe content in the CTV space. A lot of people don't realize Pornhub has a full suite of connected TV apps, and anyone can create an app, like extremist websites you might see in desktop and mobile, see the same sort of content in CTV. So what we see unfolding here is that just like any other digital platform, buyers, they have to use a third-party vendor, such as a DV or a Moat, and they'll use things like, as in the other platforms, like categories to monitor and target towards, as well as like inclusion and exclusion lists. But even with the direct buys, we still find it's critical for our buyers to use this kind of technology, as we do find holes where maybe a video player gets shared externally outside of a publisher's walls, or just some sort of weird targeting happens and this kind of unsafe content filters into what should be a direct, safe campaign.
Very interesting. Janelle, could you add to that?
Yeah, so definitely building on Carla and John, I think just taking a step back, and brands want to know that their media investment is protected in CTV in the same manner as other digital media channels. And in order to build that trust and confidence within CTV, brands really need access to the same reporting they have in other environments. And so one of the things with CTV that makes it very unique is that there's also the challenge of even just getting visibility into where your connected TV impressions ran. So even just being able to see and measure where your impressions are running and looking at your inventory across the top devices is an important aspect of thinking about brand safety within CTV. We support brand safety on CTV apps just as we do on open web and mobile apps. With app level brand safety, brands can then gain access to classifications of CTV apps, and they can use that information to determine if there are certain CTV inventory that doesn't align to their brand safety requirements.
It's great. I think people wonder if how the tools might differ specifically for CTV, since it's a different inventory type with different characteristics. So can you tell me, do the tools that are used to ensure brand safety differ in CTV from other traditional digital channels?
Yeah, so the process is a bit more challenging in CTV from other digital channels. We still have a lack of transparency and standard technologies in CTV measurement. In other digital channels, Fast4 and Open Measurement enable brand safety checks by providing a standard mechanism to pass page URLs, categories, and other metadata about the content of an impression. And these basic metadata is necessary for brand safety vendors to analyze content and help buyers make brand safety and suitability decisions. So generally speaking, TV has not been held to the same standard as digital, and the same goes for newer formats like CTV. So there's definitely more work to be done as an industry to get us where we need to go. We need more sophistication within the ecosystem. And in CTV, not everyone is following the same conventions in identifying apps. There's a lot of point solutions that partnerships are making to be able to accommodate for the lack of transparency and consistency. So really, I think demanding for the same level of transparency in CTV as other digital channels will help push the industry to defining standards that are accepted and adopted.
Thanks. Carla, could you enlarge on that a little bit?
Yeah, I would just agree with everything that Janelle just said. When it comes to technology, we're far behind with regards to CTV. There's a lack of standards that we have got on digital. But I would say in terms of what's the same across CTV versus other platforms, we still need to be prioritizing doing the human vetting and the testing and checking exactly where we've agreed that our ad campaigns are going to run. We should still be using inclusion and exclusion lists across CTV like we do any other media. And I think we'll still, even when technology, it does get there, and we've got adoption of appads.txt with our with publishers widely rolled out, and say we've got pre-bid monitoring. That doesn't mean that the walled gardens that we access inventory from will accept these solutions. I feel like that's going to be an ongoing challenge.
So both of you, what do you think are some of the key considerations to ensuring brand safe environments? Carla, what do you think?
So from my perspective, I would say making sure that you always understand exactly where your ad is being served, know as much as you possibly can. So ensure that the device that you're running across, the location of your device, the content or programming information. Not all publishers pass this, but we're starting to see this be shared more and more with our advanced TV partners that we work with at Finecast. And always make sure you're following the Clearcast guidelines for your creators when you're deciding on which media you're running your campaigns across.
Great. Janelle, do you have any additional thoughts?
Yeah, just to emphasize what Carla mentioned, I would say know your partners, work with partners you trust, and also work with an independent third-party verification partner to really be able to measure your media performance. I think another important consideration to ensure a brand safe environment is staying on top of measuring and identifying invalid traffic and ad fraud within CTV. And within this past year, we've seen an increase in fraudulent activity in CTV. It's definitely top of mind, and fraudsters are becoming more sophisticated in how they are targeting. So really devoting substantial effort into being able to track and detect IVT is an important aspect for third-party verification partners.
Great, thanks. John, turning to you now for a moment. I'm sure at DoubleVerify, you guys have a lot of ideas about best practices for CTV. Can you share some of those best practices?
Yeah, definitely. So there's, I guess, a way of looking at this from the buyer's lens, and another way of looking at it from the seller's, the publisher's lens. On the buyer's end, using a verification company, you should hopefully have access to a lot of tools, and a lot of those should hopefully also mirror what is already in place for desktop and mobile. So just as a buyer would say, they would open up TV, they would say, okay, they don't want to serve into, maybe it's like adult content. They don't want to serve into like extremist news content. And they can set these kind of categories up. And in our case, those float between screens. So it doesn't matter if it serves into desktop or CTV, both works. So the best practice is turn those on, make sure you've got them on across the different screens. And if you have something like the inclusion exclusion list saying you don't want this one particular app or you do want this one particular app, make sure the same thing is turned on for the screens as well. The other side of it is on the publisher side. Publishers, they offer, generally speaking, the same sort of like inclusion and exclusion list, but not as much on the app level, but on the show level. And so this has been a common practice for a long time in digital and linear, where you can say, don't want to serve into some shows that might not be suitable for your brand. So this is still a popular tool utilized by the publishers and is more of a direct conversation between buyer and seller. The publishers are also, over time, they're gearing up to use and more monetize their first party data. So just as they have all these show lists, they are gearing up now to categorize those and create like suitability categories, contextual categories themselves. So I'm sure over the next like year or so, we'll start to see that becoming more and more popular out there.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Janelle, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, another kind of best practice I also wanted to call out is also just thinking about the customer experience as you're thinking about what is brand suitable for you. Is the experience positive for your customer? Are they engaged with your ads? Are your ads showing over and over again? I'm thinking about that frequency capping, and also, are they actually in the room when the ad is playing? So these are the types of questions I think that should always be top of mind, but especially in newer channels like CTV.
Great. Yeah, that makes total sense. So Carla, let me ask you a question. In order to drive the CTV opportunity across Europe, it is imperative that brands can access the same reporting and insights that they have access to in other environments, which of course, I think folks wonder if that's going to be more of a challenge in CTV. So what type of insights can brands expect to see from a brand safety perspective in the CTV environment?
Sure. So I think just to draw on what Janelle said earlier, brands want consistent insights across all channels and the ability, I think, to benchmark across different channels. I think really Finecast have probably been quite successful because they've been doing this for some time. So we work directly, as I mentioned, with the broadcasters, UK broadcasters, and some CTV partners across all advanced TV. And we've been doing this transparently. I suppose Finecast has been around for 4 years, but Group M have been working with the broadcasters to build these solutions probably since around 2010. We've built these solutions alongside them from the ground up and have been able to provide consistent brand reporting across the board as a result of these deep and long withstanding integrations that we've had in place. So we are providing holistic measurements to brands and have been for some time, or since the day of Finecast being born.
That's great. Janelle, could you perhaps add to that?
Yeah, I think we've seen brand safety be highlighted into the spotlight and a focus on rethinking aggressive blocking tactics that have impeded critical news content, definitely with the pandemic and the elections. So it's something that continues to remain top of mind for advertisers and publishers, and at Moat, we want to continue to evolve along with the industry and the need of our customers. So I think brand safety is just as much about the content you want to appear next to as the content you don't. So thinking about the brand nuance and customization is more critical as we take into account the unique differences and strategies of individual organizations. So being able to really support custom segments and working with the brand to understand what is a suitable profile for their brand is important.
Great, great. So just to get a sense of if you were to make recommendations for folks to make sure that they're doing what they need to do for brand safety and brand suitability in CTV, John, what would you say is one tip for brands that you would suggest?
To use a verification partner. No one should basically grade their own homework. very hard to understand if you're serving somewhere where you shouldn't without some sort of verification partner. Like I think I mentioned earlier, we do find direct campaigns that are serving where effectively they shouldn't. And without verification, you have no idea if that's happening. So just as folks use this in other screens, they should use us in CTV.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. Janelle, what are your thoughts? What one tip would you offer to brands if they were asking you?
Yeah, I would recommend being vocal with your media partners that you need greater transparency in CTV and supporting CTV standardization initiatives. The IAB has guidelines on how apps should identify themselves, and really pushing your partners that you work with to be following these standards will help adoption in the industry.
Right. And Carla, what about you? Is there a tip that you would suggest as particularly significant to offer?
Sure, yeah. I would suggest that whoever you work with accesses the inventory that you're running across as directly as possible, ideally directly, and make sure that these platforms are all tested out so you know exactly where your ad is being placed.
Makes sense, makes sense. Looking ahead into the future, where would each of you consider that you see brand safety and brand suitability in CTV evolving over, say, the next 6 to 12 months? Because I'm sure it's going to be a constantly changing environment as with the standards becoming adopted by folks. So Janelle, what are your thoughts over the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, I think we'll start to see transparency around the content become more prevalent. There are working groups focused on gaining access to more granular metadata today. So we really do need to get to genre level reporting to allow for more granular measurement. And publishers should make content level information available more widely so that buyers can target contextually relevant ads within their CTV advertising. So collaborating with industry trade bodies will be important to getting to this level of transparency. It's not something that's going to be solved in a vacuum. So really making sure that we are working with the trade bodies to push this forward. And then another advancement expected in the next 6 to 12 months is open measurement for CTV. And OMSDK for CTV is being developed as part of the IAB working group. And this will really get us to industry standards around viewability and verification measurement within CTV. So getting to that same standard of measurement enables us to really be able to compare performance across all video campaigns and all devices in a consistent manner.
Great, thank you. Carla, what about you? How do you see brand safety and brand suitability in CTV evolving over the next 6 to 12 months?
I think we're going to see greater need for verification as we see CTV growth and the appetite for its scale. I think we're going to see increased demand for measurement and increased expectations in terms of how much we're about to measure, and I suppose further and more granular reporting off the back of this. For example, as I was saying, program name and genre rating should or hope to be more the norm. I'd also like to see more investment in things like responsible journalism off the back of having greater controls, and also, I guess, just to grow a little bit more on what Janelle was saying earlier as well, more consideration of diversity and inclusion in terms of where we're buying our media, but also how we're targeting the media and our use of block lists to optimize that so that we're not excluding diverse and inclusive audiences.
Yeah, very important. John, what are your thoughts? Where do you think CTV going in the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, kind of plus one in Janelle's first comment on the content level transparency. That to me is key. We speak with publishers, and what we hear is they're working as basically hard as possible, definitely in the States at least, to try to convert their TV campaigns into these CTV digital campaigns as the viewership has moved. And so they're investigating ways to do that. And at the same time, we're hearing from our TV buyer friends that they're having campaigns move into this space at a small degree, and then they're noticing they have no information on where that campaign is serving. So in TV land, they get, here's my show, here's my episode, here's my time slot. And then they compare that to these CTV campaigns, and like, at best, they might know the app. And so it's like this weird world where they're trying to be charged more entering the CTV space with higher CPMs, but they get less transparency. And that's going to have to resolve itself over the next year if publishers want these buyers to move over, basically.
Yeah, this is a very interesting topic. I just wanted to enlarge on that a little bit. Is there, any sense that you mentioned this sort of, not really a conflict, but a dilemma in terms of transparency and content? And anybody, please feel free to jump into this one. What is the essence of why that's the case, and how do you see it resolving itself exactly? Is it just people are going to realize that they need to do this in order to monetize, or what's the resolution there?
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, I've always seen buyers push for like show lists and that kind of granularity in digital, but it's been like a one-off thing. It's not been standardized. It's been hard for buyers to use some of these lists that kind of like a publisher would provide in like an Excel sheet one-off type thing. And that was fine when digital video was smaller, but now as it's scaling up, it's hard for an agency to do that at scale, analyze all that data at scale. So I think that's a big piece of it. Also, just digital, there's been a different expectations than the TV buyers. With TV buyers, they expect all this stuff. We've just seen that kind of be a conflict as they move over.
All right, Carla or Janelle, do either of you have any thoughts about that? Just enlarging on the question of how the content can become more available.
Yeah, I think CTV is a newer environment and it's less mature. And right now it's been a little bit more guarded in the amount of information that's being shared from the publisher side. And so this is definitely a shift that advertisers need to be very vocal about, so that it pushes publishers to make all of this information more transparent and available in a consistent manner.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I don't think that we have any questions from the audience this time. Does anybody have any last thoughts that they would like to offer? John, anything?
Use a verification partner.
Very key. Carla?
Buy everything direct.
Use a verification partner, buy direct. What sort of one thing would you say there at the end?
I would say constantly monitor your CTV campaigns and look at the numbers yourself and see if things are adding up and make sense.
Great. Thank you, everybody. This has been very enlightening. Gives us a lot of insight into how to tackle this, sort of challenging area of brand safety and brand suitability in a challenging new environment. And thank you very much for joining.
Thanks very much.